Well, you go to the Ninth Circuit, and it's a disgrace, and I'm going to put in a major complaint because you cannot win, if you're us, a case in the Ninth Circuit. And I think it's a disgrace.
Donald Trump has openly called judicial rulings a disgrace, and now he's taking that defiance to an unprecedented level. He is refusing to comply with a clear Supreme Court order on border enforcement, placing executive power above the rule of law. This move has sent shockwaves through Capitol Hill. A historic impeachment resolution, HRES 353, has now been officially filed to remove him from office. Welcome back to Independent Source for the raw truth behind Washington's power plays, free from corporate spin and mainstream media bias. We want your voice. Do you see this as a legitimate defense of the Constitution or just another political witch hunt? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit like to help spread the truth. Let's break down the mechanics of this high-stakes third impeachment.
Early this morning, the Supreme Court seemed to deliver Trump a major win. But as always with this administration, celebration quickly gave way to a far darker reality. Behind the applause lies the first act of a real constitutional crisis.
The Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers.
The Supreme Court's emergency docket, also called the shadow docket or the interim docket, is for, well, emergencies. This is every time the federal government had a case there, back to the first Trump administration. And here's just 8 months into his second term. It's being used in record numbers.
Emergency applications used to be a very, very small and not especially divisive part of the Supreme Court's work. Now, this is the front lines.
Not only are there more of these cases, but President Trump is winning more than his predecessors have. And we don't really know why.
We don't know why, because with this shadowy process, the Supreme Court doesn't have to tell us.
The irony is almost too perfect. For months, Trump and his allies celebrated every Supreme Court ruling that expanded executive power. They cheered the shadow docket, the emergency applications, the so-called victories. But now, the very same court has handed down a direct order that Donald Trump doesn't like. And what does the man who spent years railing against radical left judges and condemning the Ninth Circuit do?
President Trump really dislikes these judges.
The Ninth Circuit is a disaster. Nobody can believe these decisions we're getting from the Ninth Circuit. It's a disgrace. The Ninth Circuit, everybody knows it. It's totally out of control.
When Trump took office, most of the Ninth Circuit's judges had been appointed by Democratic presidents, and they overruled some of Trump's most provocative executive orders. The travel ban, emergency funding for a border wall, they all stopped here.
Very hard to win at the Ninth Circuit, if not impossible.
A big win for President Trump today as the Supreme Court denies Democrats access to grand jury material from Robert Mueller's Russia investigation, at least for now anyway. The court agreed to hear the administration's appeal of a lower court ruling that the documents be turned over to the House, which likely would not happen until after the 2020 election. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler putting out this statement saying that he is confident Democrats will.
Exactly what you'd expect. Oh man, the tone shifts fast. Just minutes ago, Trump was praising the Supreme Court like it was his personal cheering squad. Now, that very same court has ordered him to follow the law on immigration, to reinstate protections for asylum seekers, halt illegal deportations, and actually bring people back.
But instead of complying, his team rushed out of the country, and Trump is openly defying them. This is it, the constitutional crisis we've been warning about. Democratic lawmakers are already moving quickly. HRES 353 is on the table, and impeachment resolutions are being filed. A president flat out refusing a direct Supreme Court order. No gray area, no spin, no excuses. The stakes couldn't be higher. In the next chapter, I'll break down why this time it might actually be different. Stick with me.
Trump plans to hire thousands more border agents and redirect military funding to border security. He says undocumented migrants are criminals and psychotics.
These are seriously sick people, And no, I don't want them in our country.
Trump wants the death penalty for undocumented aliens convicted of killing U.S. citizens, and would invoke a 1798 federal law to expel without trial suspected drug traffickers or alleged members of criminal gangs. Trump has said he would remove tens of thousands of immigrants who are in the U.S. legally under temporary protected status.
Donald Trump has openly called judicial rulings a disgrace, and now he's taking that defiance to an unprecedented level. He is refusing to comply with a clear Supreme Court order on border enforcement, placing executive power above the rule of law. The result? Shockwaves across Capitol Hill and a historic impeachment resolution, HRES 353, now officially filed to remove him from office. Welcome back to U.S. Focus, your independent source for the raw truth behind Washington's power plays, free from corporate spin and mainstream media bias. Is this a legitimate defense of the Constitution, or just another political witch hunt? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and help spread the truth. Minutes ago, Trump was praising the Supreme Court like it was his personal cheering squad. Now that very same court has ordered him to follow the law on immigration, to reinstate protections for asylum seekers, halt illegal deportations, and bring people back. His team rushed out of the country, and instead of complying, Trump openly defies them. This is the constitutional crisis we've been warning about. The irony is almost too perfect. For months, Trump and his allies celebrated every Supreme Court ruling that expanded executive power. They loved the shadow docket, emergency applications, the so-called victories. But now the same court has handed down a direct order that Donald Trump doesn't like. And what does the man who spent years railing against radical left judges do? Exactly what you'd expect. Just 8 months into his second term, the pattern repeats on a much larger scale. Lower courts had already ruled that Trump's immigration policies violated federal law and constitutional due process, mass deportations without hearings, detentions without bond, asylum claims denied. Trump appealed each time, fighting tooth and nail, until the Supreme Court issued a clear direct order: reinstate protections, stop unlawful deportations, and return people with valid claims. And Trump? He said no. He claims the court has no authority over immigration enforcement, that it is purely an executive function. This is the same man who spent years celebrating every Supreme Court decision that expanded his power. Now suddenly he decides the rules don't apply to him. Classic Trump. This isn't just stubbornness or policy disagreement. It's a fundamental rejection of the constitutional system. Congress makes the laws, the executive enforces them, and the judiciary interprets them. Defying a Supreme Court order threatens the entire separation of powers. If presidents can ignore rulings, the system collapses. Unchecked power becomes tyranny. That's exactly why the founders built impeachment into the Constitution. Article 2, Section 4 says, "The president shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors." Refusing a Supreme Court order, that's textbook abuse of power. Representative Sri Thanadar and other Democrats introduced HRES 353 to address it, detailing Trump's defiance and arguing it warrants removal. This impeachment is different. The Supreme Court's order is clear, verifiable, objective. Republicans will struggle to defend raw lawlessness. Timing couldn't be worse for Trump. Midterms loom, and every Republican must cast a public vote. Even a handful of GOP defections could reach the 2/3 Senate threshold. The stakes are enormous, even surviving removal. The process itself politically damages Trump. Headlines, hearings, and evidence make his defiance impossible to ignore. History warns us. Andrew Jackson ignored Worcester versus Georgia, leading to the Trail of Tears. Trump's illegal deportations have already caused irreparable harm, and ignoring court orders compounds that damage. The Supreme Court can issue orders, but enforcement depends on the other branches. When a president defies them, only impeachment ensures accountability. Trump is testing the system, daring it to stop him. If Congress fails, it signals that one man can ignore the Supreme Court whenever convenient, slowly sliding the country into authoritarianism. But there's hope. If Congress acts, if the House impeaches, and enough Senate Republicans break ranks, it sends a clear message. No president stands above the law. It reaffirms the judiciary's authority and sets painful consequences for future Oval Office occupants. Watching Trump face accountability could be one of the most politically satisfying moments in years. The choice facing Congress is brutally simple. Are we still a nation of laws, or do we accept that one man can treat the Supreme Court like a suggestion? This isn't just about Trump. It's about the kind of country we want to be. Stay engaged, keep the conversation alive, and refuse to normalize lawlessness. The story isn't over. I'll see you in the next update.